We have been saved, Broncos country, from having to listen to annoying Kansas City Chiefs fans for at least the next 6 months. The Kansas City Chiefs fall in the Super Bowl 40-22 to the Philadelphia Eagles, and don't let that score fool you. If you saw the game, you knew then that this game was never close from the beginning. The Philadelphia Eagles dominated in the trenches for all 4 quarters, and they came in there and made sure that there could be no interference from the NFL through the referees. They made it to where they were going to win this game. They came and stole this one from the Kansas City Chiefs. And quite frankly, they have been able to be a consistently winning organization, the Philadelphia Eagles have, ever since Howie Roseman took back over the GM title in 2016. He had been the GM previously in the late Andy Reid days. Then, when they hired Chip Kelly, he wanted to be the de facto GM, so Howie Roseman shifted to a different title in the front office. Once they canned Kelly, Howie Roseman got his job back as GM, and ever since that point, the Philadelphia Eagles have been a perennially winning organization. They've only missed the playoffs twice during that period. The first year being 2016, that was the first year Howie Roseman was back, as well as the first year of Carson Wentz and Doug Peterson together. Then, in 2020, they also missed the playoffs, having a down year. That was the year that they transitioned from Carson Wentz to Jalen Hurts. The Eagles have made the Super Bowl 3 times in that time period, winning 2 of them, and besides the Kansas City Chiefs and the New England Patriots, they actually have been the most winning organization in the NFL ever since 2016. What's the secret sauce? How has Howie Roseman been able to continue to build perennially contending teams despite having different head coaches and different starting quarterbacks? What is the secret? Well, I think Howie Roseman really has 3 basic philosophies that he follows, and the reason why I'm bringing this up on a Denver Broncos-centered video is because I think the Denver Broncos need to follow this same strategy in order to become perennial contenders, just like the Kansas City Chiefs are and just like the Philadelphia Eagles have been for the last several years. The first bit of that philosophy is fill your needs in free agency. And if not free agency, then the trade market. Howie Roseman has been very aggressive both in the free agent market as well as the trade market. You think about all the free agent signings that they made to go all in around Carson Wentz back in 2017. They did a similar thing going all in when Jalen Hurts was on his rookie deal. They've continued to fill the pipeline through free agency, and they've made some big time trades as well. Probably the biggest one being the A.J. Brown trade. So Howie Roseman has been able to pull off these moves in free agency and through the trade market that have been able to consistently fill needs for the Eagles. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't prioritize the draft. He very much does, but he knows that if he's going to fill a need in the draft, then he needs to fill that need 1 year early. We'll talk about some examples of that a little bit later on in this video. Number 3 is prioritize the trenches in the draft. Always have depth in the trenches, both on the offensive line and on the defensive line. The reason why the Philadelphia Eagles have been able to be perennial playoff contenders is because more often than not, they are amongst the top trench teams in the NFL, and that was a perfect example in this Super Bowl. The Eagles dominated the Chiefs up front, both on offense and on defense, and they were able to keep Jalen Hurts clean, and they were able to get after Patrick Mahomes. That is why the Philadelphia Eagles won this game, and that is why they have been such a good team. Let's go over the last 4 drafts Howie Roseman has had, in particular the top 100 picks. There is a real theme here in terms of prioritizing the trenches. In 2021, in the first round, they drafted Devontae Smith. That was a big need for them. But then, in the second and third round, they drafted Landon Dickerson on the offensive line and Milton Williams on the defensive line. With Landon Dickerson, they knew that they needed a long-term replacement for Jason Kelce, and Dickerson was the best center coming out of that class out of Alabama. But they ended up finding out that he was a damn good guard, and he's been their left guard for the last few years, and it's been a really good one. Jason Kelce stuck around maybe a year longer than they expected. They still needed a replacement for Kelce, so in the following year in the second round, they drafted Cam Jurgens out of Nebraska. That's the whole draft your needs a little bit earlier than you're going to need them. They also had some aging players on the defensive line with Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham. So in 2022, in the first round, they drafted Jordan Davis. Then they also added to their linebacker room with Nakobe Dean, another sort of front seven trench player. Then in the 2023 draft, you've got them really doubling down on the trenches, drafting Jalen Carter in the first round when he fell to them 9th overall for some off-the-field issues. We're not going to get into that in this video. Edge rusher Nolan Smith, offensive tackle Tyler Steen. So those are 3 trench players that the Philadelphia Eagles invested in the 2023 draft. This past draft, they only invested in one player in the trenches in the top 100. That was Jalix Hunt, the edge rusher. Round 3, pick 94, but still, you see that consistent theme where even though the Eagles haven't exactly had the most pressing needs in the trenches, they've still invested in those position groups in order to keep depth and keep that rotation fresh. That's a philosophy that the Denver Broncos, in my opinion, should follow. They should continue to prioritize adding depth in the trenches, even though they might not necessarily need it right away, because they're going to have guys who are eventually going to depart this team. Mike McGlinchey, he's probably not going to be on this team long-term. Same goes for Ben Powers. You're going to need long-term replacements for them on the offensive line. Then on the defensive line, what's going to happen with John Franklin Myers moving forward? He's only got 1 year left on his deal, if I'm not mistaken. DJ Jones is a free agent. Plus, you did kind of look a little bit soft on the D-line as you moved into the later half of the season. So I do believe that that is something that the Denver Broncos should continue to invest in. Just build up the trenches. That way you will be a perennially contending team. If you have strong trench play, you are always going to be perennial contenders. I understand that a lot of people in Broncos country want the Broncos to go down the sexy route and bring in tight ends, bring in wide receivers, bring in running backs. But if you want to stay a consistent contender, you invest in the trenches. That's not to say that you shouldn't invest in those sexy position groups. You should. But you really should be more thinking about free agency and the trade market to do that. And that's what Howie Roseman has done over these past several years, bringing in guys like A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley he brought in. That's obviously the biggest free agent move that he's made over these last several years. So the Eagles really fill a lot of their offensive needs through free agency, through the trade market. That's how they get the sexy names in the building. And then that leaves them to be able to address some of the less sexy positions, some more needs long-term in the draft in terms of trench players. So that's why I'm a proponent of signing Najee Harris in free agency or some other free agent running back, maybe signing Jawan Johnson in free agency at tight end or trading for David Njoku, and then trading for Cooper Kupp to basically be your upgrade over little Jordan Humphrey. Those moves could be your sexy splash moves that you make, and then that frees you up to take best player available in the draft, most likely in the trenches long term. I know some people would think, at least short term here in Broncos country, that they're selling themselves short and they're not prioritizing their needs. But I'm telling you, Broncos country, that is the way that you stay a consistent contender long term. And we've seen that that is the best formula possible to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. That's how the Tampa Bay Buccaneers took them down in the Super Bowl in 2021. And this is how they took them, the Philadelphia Eagles took them down this year in the Super Bowl in 2025. You've got to win in the trenches. And if you can't do that, then you're not going to keep up with Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, much less beat them. All right, Broncos country, let me know in the comments section below. How do you think the Denver Broncos should go about this offseason? Should they invest in some of these more sexy positions through free agency in the trade market and then go out and draft some of their other needs in the trenches? Or should they draft some of the more sexy players and then invest in their needs in the trenches in free agency? Drop those comments down below, guys. I would love to hear your thoughts, as always. Be sure to leave a like on this video as well as subscribe to the channel. And until next time, guys, I'm your host, Gage Madrid, saying peace out.